I am of the pure mind of God. I am the resurrection and the life in my body, my finances, my relationships, and my world. I qualify everything in my world with perfection. I am perfection. I am this perfect day, and the life that lives in me is the light that cannot fail. I accept only God's perfection, His good, in my outer circumstances. I know in my heart that God is all in all. I am absolutely not concerned about what happens, because I know wonderful things are happening now. Hey, I'm not alone today.
It's sunny.
How's your day going, Miss Fiona?
Good.
Where are we walking right now?
Post office.
And then where?
Freak store.
The Freak Toys store. It's a toy store for kids. Alright, so anyway, that's where we are, and I've got my special time with Fiona, so I just invited her to come along, and I thought that would be a great idea. And so I've got a lot on my heart, and I've got a huge transmission to get out today, and it's going to probably come in chunks because I'm going to get this young lady to school at noon, and I'm doing some footage now, and I'll do some footage later, and that's how that goes. So let's just relax here. Wanted to let this just sink in. So I've got some big ideas for you. I've got some things that are going to help you. I know what's on your heart. I know what's on your mind. You know, the sudden eruption in school shootings that's been going on for a few years now, and the market's tanking and artificially inflating. It's turbulent, you know, and then you've got all the division happening. You've got all the strife. And, you know, all that strife really is the law operating as it's always has in the world. The law of strife is the world system. So the world system, what is this thing? Well, it's the beliefs of men, the human arrogance and the opinions of men. Adulterated people, in fact. And adulterated means corrupt. Of course they're corrupt. Fancy suits. Fancy pants, artificial images. The mirage of success, the illusion of prosperity. And worst of all is the appearance of goodness. For there is nothing good in any of them. I didn't say that, God says that. There's nothing good in wicked, corrupted mortals. There's nothing at all good in them. Their envy has no limit. Their strain and the burden they hoist upon one another is boundless. And the veracity of their self-seeking pleasure is only hastening by the day. And so what that looks like is, well, you have a lot of inside jobs going on with a lot of theft happening to make it look like it was a organic event or series of circumstances, when in reality it's a strategic, calculated chess game in order to extract and usurp and destroy and do all of the things the carnal mind does and repeats itself in cycles again and again and again. And we're entering into probably a decade-long 1930s style depression for the race mind. And you know, that should be very worrisome and troubling, to anyone who doesn't have wisdom. Because for lack of knowledge, the people perish. And they don't have knowledge of the Father. So the dream is going to crush them. The weight of this world will come bearing down beyond their capacity to sustain. Because they're trying to sustain on their own intelligence. They're not relying on God, they're relying on themselves. And so they don't know honor. Proverbs 26. And so they don't know honor. The folly of the fool. The folly of the fool without honor. Well, the only thing I've ever done right in my world, realistically speaking, the only reason I would even dare to minister to anyone is because I've had moments of complete surrender with God and have just been honorable. I've done my tithe. I've cleansed and purified my thought and renounced evil and said, listen, I know that there's only God here. I've sowed my seed. I have practiced my faith. I've turned to you, Father. There's nothing else that I'm required to do. And because your universe is perfect by design, and the moving part that is me is always operating in perfect harmony with all other parts of this creation that you created, because your body, your system, your consciousness is impervious to any disharmony. It knows no strife. It bears no lack. It's just ever-present unfoldment of good. And I'm a part of that cycle. And I'm a part of this unfoldment of good. And so what appears to be threatening before my human eyes must be the unfoldment of this good. Fiona, what's the good in this moment right now? What's the best thing that's happening in this moment?
We're going to the fake store.
All right. You want me to carry you for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, come on up here. Hang out with me in this video. We got some wind going, so we'll just...
That's why my ear is crazy.
Yeah. So the reality is that there is going to be trouble on the event horizon for many that are relying on their own human interests. Because the truth is these cycles really do play out, and they're going to continue to play out. And inflation is skyrocketing. And times are going to be very uncertain. There's no foundation to lean on in the human realm. So the good that's unfolding is that where do you look when all else fails? Well, humanity looks to God when all else fails. So apparently, in order for God to call home his children, all else has to fail. Because that seems to be the way humans want it. They look to God when times are impossible. Because they look to their own wisdom and understanding every other time. And so it gets to this point every so often. It's like hey, hold my hand, honey. It's like a purge. The great purge begins.
Okay.
And that purge is really the purge of the heart. And I'll give you an example, okay? The saying goes, when, good times, make men weak, and hard times make men strong. They really force you to dig deep or, perish. What are you going to do? You're going to rise above or are you going to collapse? Well, these so-called good times, this bubble that we were in, this everything is so tremendously successful for eons. The great industrial age, and then you have the technological age, and now we have the AI robot age coming in, and consciousness expanding through the machines. That's the next frontier, is humans merging with machines. I mean, why should you care? You're not a human and you're not a machine. You're neither one of those. So you're consciousness. You're the reflection of God, forever, eternal, at rest in that perfection. There's the truth, but you're dreaming in this labyrinth of your mind. Human reasoning tells you that the great reset's here and the collapse is going to happen, and yes, it is, and of course it's going to play out. And this is where the great mystery is that as this plays out, where is your card? Where is your move? How are you going to make it? Well, I hope to answer that question for you today. So that's where we're going to go. Okay, so I'm back. We upgraded our setup here.
Hi. Do you see me?
Yeah, they see you. I got this out so I can stroll with her and talk to you, so we can do our normal long walk. All right. So as I was saying earlier, we've got to talk about some things going into this so-called future here, this mortal reality that's going to be hoisted upon you. It's kind of like I'm telling you, from a video game perspective, imagine I've been to level 5. You just got done with level 4. Here's what level 5 looks like. And you're like, well, what is it? And I'm like, well, it's pretty tough, man. They throw this depression at you, and there's war, and there was inflation out of control. It's pretty scary, if you don't know the cheat codes, and you're thinking, well, I don't want to die all day long in the game. Can you just give me the cheat codes so I can just level up and and get through level 5? And so I'd say, okay, yeah, let me give you the cheat codes. So I'm telling you, like I said it in 2019, I knew what was coming in the world a couple years thereafter. I wrote songs about it. I'm telling you now, I know what's coming. I know where this is going. I've been this way my whole life. I'm like a tuning fork. I just feel everything as it unfolds from the vibrational level before it becomes so-called physical. So I'm always ahead of this because I feel the vibration of it. And then I know that vibration is going to start picturing itself in the natural realm. So what I'm telling you is that the vibration that's coming is it's going to be a drought. It's going to be a season of lack, shortage, limitation, stress, duress, and there will be a lot of capitalizing on these things. I'm not the type of person that likes to do this sort of thing, but if I were to be someone who played with the markets, I would probably just go into shorting everything that was overvalued. And I would play that card successfully, but I'm not that person, and I'm not giving you financial advice, and nor could I. But what I'm telling you is I think the market, in terms of sentiment, and this is all just psychological and emotional dramatization of what the human psyche is doing and the human evolution of its own cycling through these fractaling time periods. That's all it is. 1930 equals right now. We're going into this wave cycle, if you will. It's a longer wave cycle. You can time your wave cycles all the way down to your heartbeat. You can time it down to a fraction of a millisecond, but you can also time it out, because time is arbitrary, so you can time it out to 100-year cycles, You can do all of these things with almost mathematical certainty because it's the rhythm. It's the rhythm of the universe. It's a dielectric rhythm. It's like do 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 do. You know, the 4/4 beats. Well, we're just on beat right now. We're just in a beat. And that funk is coming, and it's going to be toxic for anyone who wants to rely on what used to work. So what I'm going to tell you is that, you went from level 4 to level 5, and level 4 was a different terrain. Level 4 is not the same as level 5. You can't use the same tactics. You're going to need a new set of skills. Now, I've been talking about these skills for a long time. I've been talking about the 3-2-1 prosperity formula since the beginning. And the reason why I know it works in level 5 here is because it worked and was the only thing that worked when I went through the Lyme disease and bankruptcy, and I went through my own personal cyclical death spiral, if you will. So similar to an economic death spiral, like you may witness in many different things coming up here in the near future, I went through an economic and physical, emotional death spiral. And so that was happening within my subjective frame of reference. And what got me to the place where the Father took care of me again is the 3-2-1 prosperity formula. It's like back to the 2015 book, Allow, Mastering the Law of Least Effort. And then you can come all the way to present time to trust the most powerful force in the universe in 0 point and equip yourself with all those tools because they're all relevant for level 5. So I see essentially that my ministry was a preparational ministry for level 5, where we're at now. So what I'm learning in my season right now, check out, here's a Lambo. That's a Huracan. See? I have a friend who has a white one like that. It's pretty cool. So, Wayne Lambo, well, there you go. There's your Lambo. Are you happy? And you're like, well, it's not my Lambo. I wanted my Lambo. It doesn't matter. It's a Lambo, and you got to see it, and you didn't have to pay the maintenance costs, and you didn't have to, do all those other expenses. So just enjoy it for what it is. It's a Lambo. So here's the deal. God prepped me. Now I live in it. I'm exactly right where you are. Hello. Hi. So I'm in the process of using the tools myself. I'm using the same tools that I teach. And I'm learning to stand on wisdom the same way that you are. I don't teach things and then go do other things, because that would rob the universe of my own expansion. Because whatever you put out is what comes back. And if I put out garbage, I get garbage. So if I put out the meat and potatoes and I serve up the good stuff, then I get more good stuff. And what I know to be true about this level we're going into is it's principles, principles, principles. And don't deviate from your principle. And that's how you're going to navigate the coming storm. There's a storm that is already emerging. It's already starting to swirl around. The skies are cloudy, they're getting dark. And just like the sunset of this last bull market that you saw with the growth of everything and the boom cycle that had gone on for eons, what has seemingly appeared as eons, maybe the last 40 years, maybe at least. with a minor glitch here and there in 2008 and maybe 2001 and things like that. Overall, things have been pretty reliable. And so humans have been pretty comfortable. And again, it makes them weak. And so in their vanity, they have turned away from the Lord. And they have become foolish without honor. So they're deviating from the principle. And so what comes to pass is that the purge happens. See, here's the deal. When you build up treasures in this world and you put them above God, you have set up false idols and they will be cast down every time. Humanity has put up its own knowledge as its own God and created these industries that have seemingly grown and grown and grown in cycles of good times. And again, it's become a faithless, perverse nation. Faithless and perverse. Because God is the only supply. And yet, where are the majority of people looking? Science. Even religion. And they're looking to all of their warmongering heroes in high places of authority and power. Just like in the time when Jesus walked the earth in the story. This is all just warmongering heroism, great wealth that is essentially a fallen empire in the making. It's a fallen empire. And it's not just a country, it's a world stage. Totalitarianism, when it reaches its completion, it's the utter destruction of human will. So the essence of the purpose behind totalitarianism from a higher perspective is the human will collapsing. All that's left is then God's will. And we know that God's will be done regardless. And so what you see happening is you see the world stage. You see the events and the circumstances and all of the little snapshot pictures of what you call reality are just the scenery taking place in a dream designed to purge and cleanse so that all that remains is God's creation. Now, I get it. You may have built vast amount of wealth in this world. And many people have, because times have been easy. And yet people are more broke, sick, and stupid than ever. Why is everybody chronically sick when they've been living in the greatest boom expansion in all of human history? Why is everybody chronically stressed? Why is everybody yoked with no time and ample burdens to carry? What is the purpose of great wealth if it doesn't liberate you from the cares and concerns of this world? And yet it has only ensnared them more into the cares and concerns of this world, and therefore the great wealth that was given was no wealth at all. It was the illusion of wealth, the counterfeit of wealth that is only earned by reflection of being the image and likeness of the parent mind, the consciousness of the Christ. That is the real Holy of Holies. It is the gold treasure. It is the desire of wisdom, is that you shall know the truth. And this knowledge of the truth is what makes you free from all of this. And so you can walk right through the storm completely sheltered by the Father's love. No different than an innocent child can come into this world vulnerable for all of its needs, kicking and screaming, and the arms of love are eager to take that child and clothe it and feed it and nurture it and raise it because of the vulnerability and the innocence itself. That's the nature of the Christ. The nature of the Christ is vulnerability and innocence. Jesus didn't put up a fist fight when they came to capture him. The vulnerability and the innocence are what brought about the transformation to spiritualized identity, eternal in God. It wasn't a haughty sense of, well, I've done 20 years of learning in this world. I'm a Gnostic master and I'm a carpenter and I have all of these intellectual friends and all of these highly skilled people around me clamoring to serve me. No, he didn't do any of that. He just got up in the face of his own persecution from the world out there and said, I have nothing to defend. I have nothing to fight against. And in that vulnerability, the doorway to the invisible realm of truth, the consciousness of Christ, the same consciousness that is there when a mother holds her newborn child with pure love. That same consciousness was immediately available to Jesus the man who beheld the creation of all that is with the pure eyes of God. Be of purer eyes than mortals. When all of these deceptions begin to occur and everything is tanking or everything is going in the direction that you didn't think it was, or someone close to you is no longer an ally but a foe, and the unthinkable happens, count it all as nothing and do nothing, because you are of no importance, which means you have no port to stand on, because you removed the personal sense of responsibility out of your thought-taking process. In other words, this isn't happening to me. This is only God experiencing God's own creation. And as I witness with an eye that is purer than human reasoning, which means I'm not seeing things as they appear before my lying human eyes, I'm witnessing them in accord with what God is knowing about God's nature, about God's reflection, the image and the likeness that I was created in. Means that I am in the center of God's will and I am beholding the true creation that God has forever placed me in, called the Garden of Eden. And that's a consciousness. And we reach this consciousness right where we are. Not because we seek to move or seek to gain or to run away from. Right where we are, right in this moment, is the allness of God's creation. Undisturbed, imperturbable, forever supplying all that is required because of divine love for God's child, you. That is beyond human comprehension. And what else could we ask for? And so what a spiritually adept student begins to do is to take all of these impressions, these images of discord and strife and collapse and lack, and begin to count it all as nothing. They can only exist relative to the sight of man on the earth. And you're asked to die to this world daily by Paul. So if I die to this world and I'm alive in Christ, my life scripture, Romans 8:10, if Christ be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the spirit is life because of righteousness. So the body of this world, including the physical body, dead means it is no power, no law, no substance. It's lifeless. Dead means lifeless. It's a lifeless creation. The body is dead because of sin. Everything you see, smell, hear, taste, and touch is what that body is. What is your body? Well, it's what you see, smell, hear, taste, and touch. That is how you know the body of flesh. And it is dead because of sin. So a dead thing is observing what it knows, which is lifeless intelligence. No intelligence. It's lifeless. There's no wisdom in it. It's an empty carcass. So level 5 is all about the carcass is a paper dragon. And it tries and tries and tries to make you break your peg so that you won't be the equal one-in-one reflection of God. One-in-one, one-in-one, holding your peg. Everything is showing you in plain sight the answers. How can I look at a collapse of a UST crypto dollar and see the truth? Yes, Miss Fiona? What's that?
I'm hungry.
You're hungry? Okay, we're going to eat something. I'll tell you what, we'll turn back and we'll go eat. Okay, so how can I witness that within that mortal creation? Because everything mortality puts in front of you is a counterfeit of something God is putting in front of you. And the counterfeit always claims that there's a broken home. And that is the password that we're going to work with on this transmission. The world as you know it in flesh is a broken home. Just say the word broken home in your heart and watch how this password exposes every nook and cranny of how that plays out in this matrix. Broken home. So this brings me into some of the work I've been doing, which is also in our Money Master course. And while you may have thought that this is not your cup of tea, why should I even learn about money? It's all collapsing anyway. Money as an acronym is my own natural energy yield. There is no such thing as money. It's an idea. So back of the thing of money is actually the idea of my energy yielding something. My energy is going to yield, and it's going to bring about wherever the attention flows, energy goes. So my attention flows and energy follows. So if I put my attention on the fall and collapse of the illusion and the dream from the body that is dead because of sin, because I saw something on the YouTube, I read something on the Twitter, I heard something on the airwaves, I felt something when that thought made me feel sick to my stomach, and I smelt the stench of all of the political atmosphere that happens to corrupt from the top down, like a fish rotting from the head down. I recognize that it's not even there. And immediately in that recognition that the body is dead because of sin, all of it is not even there. That's what it means. None of it's there. None of it. It's lifeless. It's dead. It's fiction. It's mortal - fiction. But the spirit is life because of righteousness. The spirit is life. Spirit is the eternal, present moment I am. The pure awareness behind every thought. The non-subjective, incomprehensible thinking mind itself that is completely and eternally at peace within its own creation, that is forever expanding its joy through all of its children, that knows only its goodness because it beholds only pure divine love. And its patience is demonstrated by the grace that the children which we are of the one power, one mind, one consciousness, one ruling and supreme entity that is all and knows no persons and respects no persons, which means there are no individualized egos warring against each other for their Hunger Games bread scraps. That dream is not known to God. And because we can put our attention on these ideas right where we are right now, even though according to human appearances we may have sinned against God by knowing evil and putting power of good in graven statues in this world, like dollar bills and bitcoins and gold bars and business associations and networks and events and science and all of these institutions of corporeality sense, delusional realities, because they come from the body that is dead because of sin, because they're always looking out there for governance. And the one that's out there is the lawless one. And it governs with ignorance. And we can say the password is broken home. The prodigal son, the password is broken home. The prodigal son fell into the dream of a broken home. You fell into the dream of a broken home because you believe you are outside of the kingdom of God right now. And so as I explored this in the reverse speech app, which I instructed people on class 1, and I gave some archetypes that we're using, and we're just having fun recoding the matrix from our own gamer's point of view. So we're essentially going into level 5 in this course, and we are playing with the cheat codes. So I'm giving people the cheat codes to level 5 because I know how to find them. And we're playing with the cheat codes. And so as I dug up what's in my computer logical reasoning matrix brain by reverse speeching it in the way that I describe in the class, And by the way, if you want to be in the class, you should just join and watch the replay and just go to the link below, because you're missing out on this, and that's fine. You don't need this. This is only if you want to have fun with it. I discovered some very, very disturbing evidence of things that I'm destroying right now. See, it was so in plain sight to me that I hadn't yet dissolved that material consciousness into its native nothingness. And so it festered because I didn't know how to look for it, because I was swimming in it. Couldn't even see what was around me. So what I did was I found it. And so when you do the reverse speech and you find something congruent frontwards and backwards, in other words, it says one thing frontwards and it says the same thing backwards, you're spot on. You're on the money. You got what you're looking for. So after doing this for about 3 or 4 sessions quickly, I found what I needed to find, which led me to crack this password that I gave you, and that password is broken home. And so because I found this, I want to share it with you with humility. So I found a password broken home because I discovered an archetypal pattern playing out within me that was so heinous and so vicious and so hidden in plain sight that I couldn't help but tell you about it. Now, when you reverse speech yourself, sometimes you're going to hear it's almost like a 3-year-old talking to you. That's how the voice of the unconscious, or the seventh sense, if you will, the seventh sense begins to communicate. That's the voice of the matrix carnal mind. And it tells you things because it gives you the cheat codes, because it can't help but do it. And that's how you hack these cheat codes. So anyway, it said that I was the N-word. My unconscious called me the N-word. So I looked at it, and I looked up what that word means, and it means contempt, rejection, and scorn. And then I remembered how I fell asleep in a dream of this world. Well, I must have been beheld in the womb of this world with that. I know that when I came into the world, it showed up 2 months early, and the doctors all said I wouldn't make it, and I was put on a breathing machine, and I was not allowed to be with my mother, and my dynamic growing up with my mother was not very pleasurable. There was a lot of contempt and scorn. And so, in other words, that word relates to slavery. And everything under the flesh is bound by that slavery. And I was under that archetypal pattern. And so with that, I carried it forward, and I found my forward and backward complete, perfect glitch that I had to eradicate from this conscious program. Now that I made it conscious, Carl Jung said, anything that you don't make conscious that is held in the unconscious becomes destiny. So I just made it conscious. I had this program, they don't want me. They don't want me. And that was a perfect reversal, forward and back. So I looked back on my life and I thought, oh my gosh, it's almost like everywhere I went, I could see that belief everywhere I went. See, Phineas Parker's Quimby discovered that man lives in his belief. Man lives in his belief. And so I could see everywhere I went, they don't want me. Now, do you think that I'm alone? Do you think this archetype wasn't what played out in Jesus the man's life? These archetypes are assigned to those who are rising out of this program in order to keep you stuck and bound, because they hide it in plain sight, so you'll never find it. And until you discover it and destroy it, you continue to make that destiny your reality because it's your programming. It's your programming. So now that I see it, I bring it into truth and I destroy it. Now there are some very, very powerful discoveries you're going to make when you do this work. And it might not set your world on fire immediately, but when you know why you're doing it, because you're bringing everything that is playing out in the natural back to its native nothingness and spiritualizing it with the truth, you recognize that it is your mission to bring the whole world to an end. The end times is a dramatization of you becoming conscious and bringing everything into captivity in your thought awareness and stripping it of all of its power and bringing that world of material form to an end. And so I'm working today to bring all of these programs to their ultimate zero and watching them delete back into the nothingness which they are. And this is powerful stuff. You see, these programs showed up as people and circumstances all throughout my life. It showed up in the way that people behaved around me, responded to me. And I was treated throughout much of my life with rejection and scorn. And that pain was my blessing. And that pain was my reason. Because it caused me to turn to God. Because I recognize my need for Him is only surpassed by His love for me. The world never loved me. The world always treated me that way. And the good that is unfolding within all of this is that I just made it conscious. And now it gets destroyed. Once and for all, it comes to an end. The world is in you. You're not in the world. You have to take everything captive. Every man, woman, and child, narrative, story, government, country, whatever it is you think exists out there is happening according to the programming that is going on in what you would call the unconscious within the matrix human mind that you have personally given attention to, and the energy therefore has flowed through your heart and become the visible things in the natural, so that in plain sight you would be bound by that sorcery until the very day that you had risen enough in the Christ, in the consciousness of truth, to take and overcome that world because of the Christ. Because the Christ is the only presence, power, mind, and activity, and has already overcome that world. And so you become atoned, and you become at one, and that is therefore the end of the world. So level 5 is the end of the world. I know, the mortals think I'm insane. They think I'm talking just insane, fairy, fictional fantasy. And yet they're the ones going through it all, blind to the fact that none of it ever happened. And so therefore, what do you think they're going to give their attention to for the rest of their simulated dream and pass on to their children, which puts them under the bondage of that same slavery? Do you know in the world when they used to have these beatings and lashings like they did to the Christ, they have carried that forward into modern day slavery times. And they used to take the female and They used to beat any of the rebellious children that she had, and they used to beat them almost to death, so that the female would become so full of terror and fear that she would program her offspring and the generations to come to be bound into slavery. And what do you think they called those people when they beat them? And what do you think that password is doing and that archetype is doing sitting in my unconscious mind right now? What do you think had been doing for my entire life? Beating me down, holding me captive. And for those of you who say, oh no, you're racist, you're using the N-word, I'm sorry, but nobody owns that word. That word is a derogatory term used to enslave people. And it has power behind it in the world of the natural, because it does bring severe condemnation, rejection, and scorn, which is the law of strife that plays out to anyone who has that in their matrix. Anyone. My grandfather came from Spain, and my mother is Latina, and therefore, the programming I got was that same programming. I got that same programming. And what do you think you should do with that program? Besides destroy it immediately. That's exactly what we're doing here. We're destroying all of it. So level 5 is persisting in the truth and bringing up all of these delusional sense programs and destroying them. And it's just like destroying the software that's running this whole mirage, this falsehood. We destroy it by taking out all of its archetypes. And once we remove the archetypes of it, then there's nothing left for it to hold on to you with. Yes? Yes, you can. All right, well, it's a bathroom break. We'll see you in a minute. So this is what I wrote on. I wrote on this food container from the other day when I was doing the analysis of my own reverse speech. And here's what came out. Him not wanted. Him get mad. He's sad. The N-word. They don't want me. Him not wanted. Feels sad. See the law. That was in my second one. So this is actually an archetype. It showed up. And it says to lose one's power. And I went deeper than that, and I continued to look more into it. This is a program. If you don't think that you have this program, you're mistaken, because they arbitrarily point it in one direction and say, well, this is this is the hate crime of the century, and it's pointed at this ethnic group. That's not true. In essence, that was a little pocket of it that showed up in reality, and what they did after that was they decided to make everybody in that category by putting them under the Vatican birth certificate system. So in essence, if you don't think that you are one of them, well, the idea is broken home is the password. You can't own anything. What is a slave? Someone who can't own anything. You can't own anything. You don't own your house. Stop paying your property taxes and see how long you own your house. See, the idea here is that you've been turned into chattel. You've been turned into slaves. You have a master, which makes you under that program, because you have a master. And it's a false identity crisis. That's what it is. It's a false identity crisis. This is no different than if you take an elephant and you chain it to a tree. Like if I took an elephant and chained it to a strong tree and gave it about 5 feet of length to keep it confined. Eventually I could replace that chain with a small string, and the elephant would remain confined to that tree. That's what this program does for you. It's a heinous program. So I broke this program down. It means contempt, rejection, and scorn. The password's broken home. And it's an essential belief that says, I lack the father's protection and I lack the mother's nurturing. I'm separated from my source of love. And it has to do with name. Name means home. It means location. It means you're without a name. So you have this program when you're without a name. Now, in my name is power. In Jesus' name is power, right? So in Jesus' name means the Father's dwelling. In Jesus' name, the Father's dwelling. So to reclaim our power back is what I'm going to talk about now. Because you're under that program. I don't care what ethnicity you are. You're not made of flesh. You have to understand, if you stop looking at the world through the fiction and believe that you're made of flesh, then we have to see it for what it is. You're being programmed to be chained to a rigid, fixed position like that tree. You're chained to it with a string, and the string is that program. And the mechanics of that program means you lose your power. That's what it does to you. When you wear that name, unconsciously, you lose your power. So, little new scenery here. This is a dog park, one of them that Mona comes to once in a while, so I figured I'd stop out here. And, I really want to bust this apart today. I want to destroy this program. So I've given passwords over the course of the last year or two. First one was cheaters. Exposes, those around you who are basically lying to you and robbing you. Just by knowing that password, just saying the word cheaters and thinking about it, begins to just pop open the dream and expose that it's all around you. See, these passwords are so much hidden in plain sight that you have to actually bring it to the forefront and see it right in your face before you actually understand how obvious it is. It's similar to what Clotaire Rapai calls the culture codes. America's an adolescent culture. We have sex equals violence. That's the culture code. Sex equals violence. And see, it's in plain sight. They say, oh, nail that person. Screw that person. I'm going to pound it. I'm going to, hey, whatever. That's violence is the code. So everything's on code. So cheaters is the code for how the 1,001 industries live off the corruption of a corrupted kernel, a corrupted seed, which is the human mind. So you've got this code. And this code is on point. It's how it works. And the next password I gave was, false responsibility. So false responsibility busts the doors open where all these demands and expectations on your life become known to you that are superfluous. Why are you being drawn in every direction? Why are you being pulled and tugged in a world of distraction, constantly creating noise all around you? It's to hide you from the truth by putting false responsibility on you. The next password I gave you was no cause. Well, no cause. All of the apparent evils that seem to be happening all around, well, there's no cause. That's why they can't be resolved. Listen, that's why thousands of years of so-called history have done nothing to evolve the consciousness of greed, lust for power, and all of the self-seeking evils on this planet. Because there's no cause. It's a dream. That's why. Now, the next thing is broken home. Because you are a cosmic traveler to a distant land, like the prodigal son, you fell asleep in a dream of the 5 human senses. It's all around you. Your broken home is this planet. It's not the one that God set you in, the Garden of Eden. This is the dream that brings the punishment and the consequence of sin. It brings the lashings on truth. It brings the beatings. And it subjects you to the crown, to the queen, to the Vatican, to the Pope, to all of the slavery that you live under. Every single moment of your existence. And it's all held to the tree, the root of wickedness, by nothing more than a string. And that string is your belief in the false master. And that's your human mind. The string that binds you to your slavery, that's etched into the DNA of flesh itself, is the belief that the human mind exists. All of the emanations that come from this realm make up the body that's dead because of sin. What you see, smell, hear, taste, and touch. This is not the world God created. Your home was broken. And that's why you have this program. That's why you have a master. And that's why you're a slave. Yes, master. Yes, master. Yes, master. You step out of line, the master's going to beat you. The master will beat you so hard that generations to come will be living on that string. And yet there is no master. So I come to tell you that there is no master. And that's how you obsolete that program. Without a master, could there be a slave? Could the people that live on the plantation, the world plantation, because it used to be little plantations, but now it's a world plantation. It's a slave world. Could the people be held in bondage without a taskmaster? Yes, master. Yes, master. Yes, master, we do what you tell us to. Yes, master. Yes, master. If there weren't a bunch of people going around saying, yes, master, would there be the taskmaster? What came first? The taskmaster or the yes master? Well, we know that it was the belief in 2 powers of good and evil that created the fall in the garden. And so when you fell from the Garden of Eden, you believed that there was an evil power. And then you also believed that there was a power of good in this world too. And then you were carried off into bondage, slavery. The N-word program is you, in flesh. It's not reserved. Well, you're not special just because you get it because of a skin color. Everyone gets it. Don't pay your property taxes and find out if you get it or not. Stand against the wrong political party in a country anywhere remotely close to you and find out what happens. Talk about things that are not part of the narrative that the taskmaster wants you to talk about. and watch your digital chip body be executed. You'll be deleted off the internet faster than you can imagine. So, are these not beatings and lashings? Were the lockdowns not beatings and lashings? Was the financial deprivation during those lockdowns with pitty little breadcrumbs handed out? Were those not the sustenance of slave food? You were just beaten and traumatized and put back down because you tried to rebel and you tried to escape. You tried to walk out of Babylon. And so now they'll give you a choice and let you be the Uncle Tom and say, here, just conform and we'll give you a little more than those ones over there. We'll let you have a little piece. We'll let you eat. They don't get to eat, but we'll let you eat. But you're going to keep them in line for us. Well, who is them and who is us? And what's going on here? Where's this all happening? It's all happening within you. It's all happening because of the power of good and evil that's been ascribed to the outer empty carcass that doesn't exist. And it keeps presenting itself again and again to you as the substitute for reality. And every time it says it's going to beat you some more. You have the choice to recognize that there's no cause, and to see it for what it is. Broken home. It's a broken home. They tried to destroy the father in my home. They tried to destroy the father in my home. They tried to remove me from the mother, from the nurturing mother of divine wisdom, and destroy the Christ, my father parent mind, by bastardizing it and labeling me as their slave. And yet I never left my Father's kingdom. And yet divine love is all there is in this space right here, where they claim to be. There is no cause. And so without a taskmaster, there has to be no yes master. It's just the master, the one, the Christ. And once I am the Christ, then there is no phenomenal world anymore. There is no good in the dream, and there is no evil in the dream. There's just the one. And I stand still, and I recognize my identity. And in that space, I no longer identify as a person or a personality. I no longer have to overcome anything. I no longer have to take care of any of the burdens of a world that didn't exist. I simply rejoice in the fact that the Christ is and has already overcome the world and all of these programs and these archetypes that make up this fallen dream state of mortality, which is what we call the world. The Christ has already overcome all of it. So I identify as the Christ. And while they are doing their lashings, I am not attached to that body, because that body is dead because of sin. I am attached to the Spirit, the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Within me is all in all sustenance, moment by moment. I seek for nothing. I have already arrived. The good in this world is not tempting to me anymore. The evil that appears to lurk in the shadows is nothing. The light is all there is. And I destroy the world. I devour matter within myself because I am the Christ. And right where I stand is holy ground. And power flows in my name. My location, my name, the Christ within me, the consciousness of one self, one power, one mind, one law, one governing presence. And I hold to that. And in that space, my accuser can't be found. And I've just abolished the slavery of Egyptian sorcery. And I've broke the spell. The Delilah spell of this world. Her beauty is no longer anything to me. I don't need her material wealth. I don't need her sensuality. I don't need her lust. I don't need anything from her. Her ways are the pit of hell. I just remain still. I'm not under the password of false responsibility. I don't have to rush around like a chicken with my head cut off all day trying to impress this world. I don't have to seek for anything, honor in this world, accolades, notoriety, an attaboy pat on the back by someone else who's dreaming. I just simply be still and know that I am God. I am, and there is no other. And I just be still. And let the Christ be the overcoming presence. And the battle is not mine. And as the ascended Christ in spirit is recognized in your attention, energy flows in that direction. And that's the law of money master. Energy, my own natural energy yield, mastery is attention and energy flowing where attention goes. I am the living Christ within me, and there is no other power. And all the energy flows into that venue now. And now it's my Father in me that doeth the works. And I have the faith of a mustard seed. My vulnerability is my strength. My blamelessness is my receptivity to that divine love. I'm completely vulnerable and completely blameless. I am knowing no other consciousness. Christ alone is. And I stand still and yield before the truth, which means to forgive, for and give, to yield before. I am constantly forgiving 7 times 7, 7 times 70, I am forgiving by yielding before this truth, moment by moment by moment by moment, and I am letting go of the world and giving the whole world back to God. I'm giving the whole world back to God. All of it. I'm already firmly established in God's creation as God's child, which means I've already been provided for, which means I'm already complete. All that's left for me to do is to give now. I'm the overflowing source of good. And as I give more, more is given. Therefore, I am influencing this through my action. Acts and action. The action. It's acts and action together. The action. My action. My activity is looking for ways to serve in being the light where there seems to be discord, of being the solution where there seems to be a problem, filling a need where there seems to be a deficiency of good. For what else could I do as the reflection of God's image and likeness? And as I continue to remain in that venue as the hands of God, then God takes all of the responsibility for His creation, and I take none of it. And so therefore it's managed and operated by God, and not some mortal that is corrupt. Mortality cannot govern anything. Give it all back to God, all of it, and go free in this moment. You're free. The password's broken. You are no longer under that slave consciousness. There is nothing for you to bow down to other than the living, loving mind of God, the Christ consciousness. Because there is no evil. And there's nothing good that you have to seek for because it's already within you. And it clothes itself according to its own needs. Because it's already complete. And you're the witness of that. So you don't have to think about tomorrow and 10 years from now and 5 years from now. And you go through this level, this chapter of destroying the whole world in your consciousness. You're doing this, by the way. And you dissolve it all back into its native nothingness, so that all that remains is the creation that God intended for you to know. It's the dense fog being lifted from your eyes. You're not rich because you've accumulated money. You're rich because you reflect the wealth that God is, because of life itself being all in all. If you know the truth, then you're free. If you're ignorant of the truth, then you're a slave. And slaves can't own anything. So don't deceive yourself by thinking that you have more than the next when you're still a slave. There's nothing out there to have. There's nothing to gain out there. I and my Father are one. I alone exist. In me is the fulfillment of all desire. This moment is the totality of life, expressing life, which means there's no lack or deficiency in this moment. Once I yield human reasoning before divine truth, then my attention flows, and energy goes where attention flows. And that energy becomes my currency. It becomes the price that I pay for the possessions that are already given. My inheritance gets claimed because of God's will being already done. And my attention to that idea brings me into connectivity with that reality. I'll just close by telling you the passwords again. Cheaters, the parasites all around you in the collective matrix are trying to usurp your currency, your energy, by stealing your attention and focus. Then they try to give you false responsibility, to keep you diverted, distracted, and delusional, believing that you can do anything of yourself or acquire anything, or that you could possibly lack something, and there is a space where God doesn't fill all with His love. False responsibility will do that to you. Then there's no cause. They're always trying to assert that you should find the solution to something that there never was created. So therefore you keep looking around, not realizing there's nothing to find. There's no cause. The only way to give all of this a solution is to let it go. Because in the realm of the natural, the solutions create the problems. So stop trying to find a solution and therefore creating the problem. That's how they got you to whip yourself into slavery. And finally, broken home. God is not the father of a broken home. And for you to live in a place or a realm where you are being persecuted and chastised and ostracized, rejected, scorned, criticized, condemned, is an impossibility in God's Garden of Eden. And the only creation that God ever made was the Garden of Eden. Genesis 1 is the only true account. God and man in the garden forever. You can't leave it any more than you could step out of existence itself. But the arrogant human mind believes that it can step out of God's creation. That's how ridiculously stupid it is. So it creates an aberration of God's creation and turns it into your dystopian nightmare of a dense fog of terror that has no basis in reality. It has no foundation, there's no standing, there's no law, it's the lawless one. So it has no jurisdiction to operate over you other than the fact that you identified and gave it a claim. Your attention flowed to it. That's why the energy went into it. Because you said, yes, there's a good and evil in this world, and I know there is because I'm reasoning that this is good and that's bad constantly. And so therefore you gave yourself to that erring condition of materiality, the Adam dream. And you made yourself a slave. And then they beat you and lashed you because those are the consequences of sin. Because you knew two powers. You knew good and evil. Both good and evil in this world are illusions. There is no world out there. There's no cause. And the broken home would imply that you could somehow step out of being the reflection of your father. For does not the father, the prodigal son, come out and find his son and gaze upon him? And does not the son run home to the father? Implying that this image in the mirror sees itself and reflects and runs back to itself, and they become one. For you to be in a broken home would imply that the Father does not see the Father's own creation. And that's an impossibility. And that breaks the dream. And the lie that says they don't want me, there is no mind to hold a thought outside of harmony, goodness, love. There is no other consciousness to have an opinion. There is no person. There's only God. Right where that person claims to see that belief, there's only God and God's idea. And there isn't a single element of error in God's idea. Rejection is not known to the Father. For what parts within the Father's creation could possibly be rejected? And we just destroy the world by knowing the truth. Be still and know the truth. I'm destroying that world. That world is a dream. One with God is a majority, so I've got a majority backing. The lawless one is what I'm up against, and I'm with divine law, that is the only encompassing power in the universe. And it's not my battle. So I just rest and know that what is to come and what has already come and what is coming is nothing more than more good unfolding, because that's all there is. Only the good is true in this moment. Only the good is true in this moment. And the old carnal mind says, yeah, but they don't want to. Say, no, only the good is true in this moment. Only the good is true in this moment. And I've got some good reverse speech overdubs that I throw in there, and I rewire and I hack that matrix, and I basically put my own code in there. And I'll talk about that in my next class for those of you that are in the class, and show you how we're doing this. But I teach you just by being here that to be here is enough. I am enough. The belief that I'm not enough is what drives you into all of those broken home scenarios. And consequently, those that believe that they were born in a broken home always feel that they're not enough, because they're one and the same. There is no broken home, and I am enough. And I sit with certainty with that. And that's all I need to know. And the rest takes care of itself. And I mean that, the rest. The resting in truth takes care of itself, which means truth is all that's left.